Welcome back on the Good Morning Artesia radio show. Soon to be our new theme song for New Mexico, Rocky Mountain High, with John Denver.
I love the optimism.
Isn't that supposed to start tomorrow, the legalized pot? I think that's supposed to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
But,
Yep.
I don't know, because it's not anything I'm going to be standing in line for, you know.
Well, yeah, and there was a real rush to do that. And I think one of the real concerns going forward with that is, how does it impact a variety of different issues across the state here, because there are going to be, significant concerns.
Oh, yeah. Mark Ronchetti is with us. He's a Republican candidate for governor, and good to see you. Glad you're
thanks,
in Artesia.
Great to be here. Great to be back with you.
Yeah. What are you doing in Artesia today?
We were bouncing around. We were here yesterday, and then today, meeting with voters, meeting with people, just to kind of get an idea of what's going on, what are their concerns. And I think the concerns are huge. I think down here is a great example of you're the engine that drives the state of New Mexico. And people down here are, I think there's a couple of different concerns. One is, do they even hear your voices in Santa Fe anymore? And I think the answer is pretty clear, and what's happening there. And not only that, it's, you're seeing budgets being squeezed more and more. And we got a number yesterday. The average household in the country now will pay $5,200 more this year. Yeah. And in Santa Fe, they're talking about a $250 check. It's not enough.
Yeah.
And the real concern is we're going to have more month-than money for a huge percentage of New Mexicans going forward here, and something has to be done about it. And I'm concerned this governor has no grip on that, and really looks at the government as the entity that has to be funded, has to have everything. Meanwhile, the very people the government's supposed to represent get nothing. And that's a killer to me right now. That's a thought process that has to change.
Well, we kind of saw that during the pandemic with the governor. I think the governor is very proud of what she did to help us get through the COVID pandemic. And there's a lot of people in New Mexico that, thank her for saving their life. And I've never looked at the governor or the president or the mayor as who's personally responsible for saving my life. What's been the impression that you have of the governor's leadership during the pandemic? Because nobody expected that.
Right.
Nobody planned on that.
Right.
Nobody, when the governor was elected or whenever anybody was elected, said, oh, by the way, we're going to have a pandemic that you have to deal with.
No question. And I think all of us early on, within the first few weeks, had some grace for the governor to say, look, this is a tough scenario. We don't know exactly how to handle it. The problem was, as we went on month after month, she began to ignore the science and then just push control over the state of New Mexico, and the results were devastating. We lost 40% of our small businesses in the state. We still haven't seen a recovery from that. We don't have enough workforce anymore across the state anymore. She went for maximum control over everybody, and it hurt us. If you look at the states around us, their death rates are no worse than ours, and we were locked down to a devastating degree. The problem we're going to look back on, I think, is we go back and look at how we masked our kids endlessly, how we shut down our businesses, how we did the things we did for control. I think we're going to be ashamed of the way we handled it, because we didn't stand up sooner and say, wait a minute, this is not the way we should be moving forward. You're right, it's not a government's job, and a governor's job especially, to dictate the decisions of your life. It's not. And I'll tell you, Gene, if I'm the one who's there and I'm the only guy there to protect you, you've got a problem. I just tell you right now, that's not the governor's job. It's not. And I think that's the frustrating part of this, is the role of government. What is the role of government? And to me, the role of government isn't to be this behemoth who tells you what you're allowed to do, because that's where we are right now. The government's job is to protect your liberty and let you lead your life. And right now, we have flipped that on its head, and you can feel it in the state.
Yeah, well, you talk about a lot of people call it the brain drain, the people that left the state. This particular part of the state, since we're so close to Texas, has lost a ton of people that have moved their families to Texas. I usually give the temperature for Lubbock, and I say the free state of Texas.
Right.
As governor, what can we do to bring people back? And I'll give you an anecdote. I was talking to a friend of mine who now is in Hobbs, in education in Hobbs, and Tuesday night when his son was playing baseball, he was in Oklahoma trying to recruit teachers from Oklahoma to come to New Mexico.
Yeah.
So what, as New Mexicans, can we offer to teachers to want to come back to the state of New Mexico.
Yeah, you talk about teachers, you talk about even beyond teachers, nurses. We lost 25 nurses over the past few years, or 2,500, nurses over the past few years. People are exiting the state. It's funny you mentioned Lubbock. We are wearing out the road to Lubbock. We're not wearing out the road back from Lubbock. And that's a huge concern. So a couple things I think across the board here we need to do. We don't make doing business, either building a business or living here, easy for people. We don't. We pile more taxes and more regulations on people across the board. So when they have a chance to do business in Texas or they do business here, you see the difference is stark. There's the Bartu family up in Sierra County. They do concrete. And they were going for a new concrete plant. They went and applied for it. They went through all the steps for it. It took a year and $130,000. Their son says, okay, I'm going to go to Texas. I'm going to try one there. They go there. And he goes there and gets it done in 2 weeks for $1,500. Now, who's generating more money for the state right now?
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
He is, because his business is operating. He's got people flying out the door doing things to make business easier is something we have to do. And also, you talk about individual teachers. Well, when we have a structure in the state of New Mexico where we have so much money hung up in the bureaucracy, right? We pour more money in. It never makes it to the classroom. It never makes it to the kid. Overall administrative costs in this state are up 60% in 10 years. Money to the classroom is up 20. We have a jobs program right now, and we are not putting those jobs where they belong, which is with teachers, and really giving teachers the opportunity to expand and help kids across the state. We're now 51st in education now that they count Washington, D.C., and yet we've never put more money in. And so we're not getting these results. We have to begin to return control down to the school board level to parents. And if you look as a parent, too often with the PED standards and the way they operate, they try to create this wall. They create this wall so you can't look into what they're doing. And we found that when I was with my wife, our daughter Ava went to 6th grade. And so we walk into the public school and they said, this is the last time we're going to have a meeting. And my wife and I went, we just got here. What happened? And they're like, we won't be communicating with you anymore. We'll communicate with Ava. And we kind of look at each other like, what? And as we got home and we started to think about it, it started to make sense that they didn't want us in there. They didn't want us knowing what they were teaching, when they were teaching it, or how they were teaching it. And that lack of transparency kind of came out during COVID because parents got a real look underneath the hood in some of these school districts. Now, some, especially down here, some of these go very well. Some of the schools here in our teach are great, but that's not the case across the state. So that's why a huge PED, just kind of this behemoth trying to tell you what to do here, the same way they tell what to do in Santa Fe or in Albuquerque, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. If you get the results here locally, we want you to have that control. And not only that, eventually we need money to follow the child so that they're able to adjust their education the way they need to. Right now, that thought process of one size fits all and too many kids are sent into failing schools. And what does the state say? Good luck. Well, guess what? That's not good enough.
We had one of our assistant superintendents on yesterday, and I asked him about what they've seen now that we're out from the remote learning, where actually have kids in school and the masks are off, what they're seeing where kids are behind. And he said math is one of the areas that they're behind. Reading you can kind of do online, but the
math is tough.
Math is tough online.
Yeah.
And the PED has been a big issue for a lot of reasons, COVID and then some of the other heavy-handed things, the social studies standards that have come out and so forth. As governor, what needs to happen with the public education department? What direction would you take with that area?
I think you have to defang it effectively. You have to take that bureaucracy, shrink it down, and give a lot of that authority down to the local level. So as you do that, you're going to give local school boards, local groups, the ability to be able to adjust as need be. And you mentioned COVID. We've got to catch kids up. I mean, they're all going through testing here over the next couple of weeks. We're going to get some numbers back, I think, that we're going to be shocked by. Or maybe we won't be shocked, but they're going to be really, really rough because kids have missed out on so much learning. We had the 6th fewest learning days of any state in the country. So that's where we are. We have to catch kids up. Well, that's going to fall on the school districts to say, okay, what do we do? How do we adjust to our kids? Our kids here in Artesia are at a different spot than kids in Albuquerque are. So we have to begin to lose some of that influence from the PED. And I will tell you, those social studies standards, if you read them, they're 60 pages long or whatever it is. Go to the last 4 pages. that's where they give up the game. It's like they just threw up on the page and said, this is what we're really going for. And you're like, wait a minute, are you serious? That can be rolled back, by the way. That can be rolled back right away. That's not passed through law. That's regulatory. So that can be rolled back and will be when we win this race. So that's going to be critical in all this. But the overall message has to be that we have to get money back down into the classroom, and then we have to be able to tailor what we want to do going forward here. And I think we have to look at our Title I kids, and we have to look at our learning disabled kids and say, what can we do to help them, especially at third grade? Third grade reading by every metric is the key point, right? If kids can read to proficiency by third grade, they're going to be in pretty good shape going forward here. Well, we're not doing that right now. We're doing it to the tune of about 25%. So that has to change. That's got to be our moonshot. So one of the things we'd love to be able to do is set up education savings accounts for our Title I kids to say, okay, we know now through what we learned through COVID, through Zoom, things like that, we can start to help. And you just mentioned it. Learning via Zoom, especially reading, is doable. It's very doable. So if we can start to extend that out and give kids the chance to have a tutor as we work our way forward to get them where they need to be, that's one of the critical things we need to be able to do, is to be able to adjust, give them the help they need for the individual child.
Now, when you said, you mentioned the money follows the student, how far would that money be able to follow the student? Does the student have to be in public school, or would that money be able to follow if the parent wanted to put them in a private school?
No. I think ideally you want to give people the maximum amount of flexibility you can. The issue is going to be, this is going to be a fight with the legislature, right? This is going to be one of those things where you have a teachers union that is entrenched, and they're saying, we don't want to change. Remember, it was what? We were talking 2-3 years ago when we would talk about charter schools, and we'd get a lot of pushback. Well, what's happened to pushback on charter schools? That's gone away, because they can't push back on it anymore, because people are like, wait a minute, public charter schools in the state of New Mexico are helping. They're making a difference, and it's working. So that starts to give you a little layer of choice there. So what you want to be able to do is give parents those options so that they can make that choice for themselves. There's no question about that. But will it be something in the legislature that's going to be a tough sell? Yes, we're going to have to do this over time and work on it. But I think we have to invest the time and effort into making sure parents get that choice.
Well, and that's going to be a big challenge for whoever's governor is dealing with the legislature. If a Republican wins the governorship, it's not likely that the House or the Senate will flip over to Republican. Most likely they're going to stay in Democrat hands. So there's some things that the governor can do. You talked about the regulatory aspects through the PED, but there are going to be some aspects that you can have all the great ideas in the world, but when it gets over to the roundhouse, it kind of stops there.
You have to attack the 75-25 issues. What are those issues that you look at and most New Mexicans say, yeah, we got to do it? That's where you have to put this, to me. So, for example, if you talk about voter integrity, when we talk about a bill that's one line long, and the line is, to vote in the state of New Mexico, you must show a valid ID. 77% of New Mexicans agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So those are the kind of issues you have to push. But to me, too, I think the first thing we want to do is set up with a Citizens Bill of Rights, which is to make this state safer. So we want to come up with a package. We have a package, but we want to push through the package that says nothing is going to get through the legislature until we make the people of this state safer. And the legislature has ignored this, and not only ignored it, they've stood in the way, and they've tried to stop meaningful legislation. Catch and release has to end. It has to end.
Yeah.
We have to return qualified immunity to police. To look at police and target police versus targeting the violent criminals is crazy. You look at the story in Albuquerque, 4 or 5 days ago, got someone accused of 2 murders back out on the street.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I mean, that's where we are.
Yeah.
And so what you can do is, in Republicans, and there are plenty of, I think, Democrats who would get on board with the fact that we have to have a crime bill, a real crime bill, and nothing goes through the legislature until we do it.
Well, it does seem, and we need to break for news here in about a minute, but it does seem that there are Democrats who behind the scenes say they support it, but then when it comes time to actually cast their vote, whether it's in committee or on the floor, they don't remember those conversations. I didn't say that.
And that's why, to win this race, and we have to create a movement. We have to create a movement of people that are conservative, that are independents, that are Democrats as well, that say, wait a minute, enough of this. And you have to have someone who can push that movement forward. And it's a movement that's got to last a lot more than 4 or 8 years. It's got to change the way we think about this state.
Can you stick around for a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Mark Ronchetti is with us. He's running for the Republican nomination for governor here in New Mexico, and we're going to ask him to stick around for a little while longer here.